And spawning in the bottom left-hand corner of Tropical Sacrifice ESL, we have the American Protoss player himself. He is blue, representing Team Super, as well as India in Nation Wars. It is Rhizer.
Of course, a very young player, an up-and-coming player in the NA region, so that's why I thought it was really cool that he was able to represent India alongside Demi in Nation Wars this year.
Yeah, for a long time, India just wasn't able to participate in Nation Wars because Demi was the only player from the region.
Yeah.
I know for a long time, Fear Dragon was like, oh, maybe I can try and push GM and maybe we can play together. That never really came to fruition. But Rhizer was able to come out, he was able to represent, and they did fairly well for themselves in Nation Wars. And that, of course, leads us into here, where Rhizer already in that decider match, in that winners match, doing relatively well for himself.
And let's see how this one is going to play out. Of course, we're not just in the new maps, we're also in the new meta. Well, new meta. It's been a couple of months at this point, but yeah, we'll see how this all plays out. Is Rhizer one to play more of a Swarm Toss style, or does he like going for a lot of Oracles early on?
I think that's that's something very important to keep in mind, is that a lot of these North American players, sure, the meta has shifted, sure, a lot of people are playing like Hero and going triple Oracle into Blink Stalkers essentially, but not all players are adapting that style, and especially in the NA region, there are a lot of very stylistic players who do their own thing anyway, just because they're good at it, and it may not be as meta, but because they're so good at it, they can still make it work. So I'm excited to see what Rhizer is going to bring to the table, especially amongst these European players. So far, so good. He does force the unnatural natural. That's kind of the only thing so far. He's going to try and abuse this space here with his initial adepts, I'm sure. And lo and behold, nothing too out of the ordinary. We do see the Stargate.
Yeah, it's looking nice and standard for the time being. Nothing really compelling him to throw on an early Twilight Council or anything.
Yeah, not yet. I feel like the first unit from that Stargate is going to be the biggest tell here once we get into the swing of things. So far, the first adept does come across the map, and I'm sure he's hoping to catch some transferring workers between the bases. But Aristori, he's been here before. So far, he hasn't lost anything. I expect you soon!
Up! As one drone will go down, and this adept will live. What a flex.
So far, again, one drone is okay, but now we have two adepts, so they have that one-shot potential as they go into the bases. And interesting, Rhizer from here goes for a Void Ray.
He's playing this out a lot more defensively than I really expected him to. Good use of denying the creep here. Sorry, definitely not, wasn't anticipating the adepts to stay after initially being deflected.
Yeah, they just keep on poking in. They confirm that the third base is on the way as well, just looking to catch any other drones that they can. Meanwhile, back at home, again, things are looking relatively standard. So, with that first Void Ray coming out, we are going to be seeing a Denial of Vision. The Overlords are going to be taken out, and from here, we can still go into that Oracle style. We can still go into that Hero style. It's just going to be a little bit delayed because Rhizer is a little bit more concerned with keeping Aristori in the dark.
Yeah, it's going to be another bit of a tell here to see how many Oracles Rhizer commits to. This could be a little bit more committed. He could go for a lot of Oracles and then transition to, like you said, typically we see Blink Stalkers after that. But if he only gets one, if he only gets a two or something like that, then, well, we're going to see a switch into Twilight Council much earlier. And we're not typically going to be seeing Blink Stalkers.
Yeah, we'll see which way we end up going. So far, second Oracle is on the way. The first one was used to try and make sure that this third gets up and running and the Ling run-by doesn't get too out of control. We just see Aristori just poking and prodding with his Lings, just confirming that, of course, this space is going to be saturated and that the wall is indeed a wall. Again, just dips in. And at the same time, the Overlord is also going to be sneaking into the main base to try and get an eye on the rest of the tech.
Yeah, it doesn't see much of anything right now. Rhizer pretty cleverly hiding the tech behind his mineral line.
Yeah, the Stargate behind the mineral line. Yeah, what's interesting is that we have a Forge and a Robo here, not a Twilight Council.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious as to how this is gonna play out. Now we have Twilight Council coming out. Are we gonna see a Robo Bay once this Robo facility finishes up? I feel like that's, usually what you will want, right? Some defensive Colossus or maybe even a disruptor just to stay safe.
Yeah, we'll see where this kind of takes us. We do see that, again, Rhizer was a little bit careless with his oracles. He goes across the map, gets a little bit of damage done, but loses one oracle in the process. At the same time, because the oracles were out on the map, they were not here to defend this mineral line, so 3 probes end up going down. Nice counter damage here by Aristori. But yeah, it was just a little bit odd to see the prioritization of the Robo the way that he did, and we see why, because he is going to be pumping out some Immortals, and he is going for charge.
Charge Lot Immortal, I gotta tell you, Light, I haven't necessarily been keeping up too much with PvZ for the past week or so, but I don't think I've seen this too often.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, it kind of makes sense because, of course, you know, roaches are the bread and butter of ZVP for the Zerg player, so Immortals are going to help out with that. And obviously, we are going to eventually end up into Charge Archon, as we do have the Templar Archives on the way as well. Yeah, it's just really interesting how Rhizer got here a little bit. Again, not quite meta when it comes to getting here. And on the flip side of things, Aristori himself, like, he's been able to drain up fairly well. His mineral lines have been left alone for the most part, and we see that he wants to be a little bit cheeky himself.
Yeah, love to see that Spire coming down. Of course, it's going to be a little bit trickier when you... Whoa, hold up.
Yeah. Oh my god, we did see a revelation on the drones, and the drones actually moved close enough where Rhizer actually saw the Spire.
And with that, Galal Reconstitution was started up.
Yeah.
Around that time. I feel like, regardless, Aristori was probably going to have a couple of roaches at the start of the game just to keep him alive, but yeah, that's definitely unfortunate that his tech did get scouted there.
Yeah, and we'll see if he commits, because Rhizer clearly saw it. We do see a second Stargate and Phoenixes being produced, so he's getting ready for the mutas. And because that revelation was so subtle and it wasn't directly on top of the tech, I don't know if Aristori knows that Rhizer knows.
Well, keeping my eyes glued to that production tab right now, and I don't see any Mutalisks being produced right now. This is best case scenario for Aristori, but there we go. 9 Mutalisks are coming out right now. They're, of course, going to be vulnerable to the Archons, the Phoenixes, and whatnot. But if he can find a little bit of an opening here, he can do a whole lot of harassment damage with these Mutalisks.
Bearing in mind that, I mean, we have very few Archons available. Storm was actually finished up, so Rhizer's going to be relying a lot more on that. And he hasn't seen the Mutas yet, so he didn't overcommit into Phoenixes. The worst thing to do is to just keep pumping out Phoenixes, and then you realize, oh, my opponent actually never made any Mutas. Yeah. So you have to be very careful with how you play that out.
And Rhizer has been playing this up relatively carefully, even getting one more warp in before pushing on in. He dips in, gets a revelation, and realizes, I cannot push into that much Zerg. Holy heck.
Yeah, there's just so much Roach Ravager there waiting for him. Meanwhile, the Mutas are looking to slip into that main base undetected so far. What do we have at home? Oh, cannon's already set up though. So again, Rhizer, he was well prepared for these Mutas.
Yeah, 2 cannons. That's, you know, not even something that Mutalisks want to sustain too much damage against, you know. There are times where you can overpower 1 cannon, but 2? Forget about it.
Oh, forget about it, mate. Meanwhile, the Mutas, they do dive on top of one of the Phoenixes, and it does go down at the same time. Oh, the Void Ray goes down, and the main army of Aristori is going for a counterattack.
It's going to run straight into a lot of Archons and Immortals, so beautiful force fields and even better storms on top of everything else. This was not an efficient trade, to say the least.
This is not the ramp you want to be pushing up Aristori, and he pays the price for it, loses a massive chunk of his army, and now he is on the run. He kind of has the high ground here if he turns around, and Biles are going to slow down the army of Rhizer, and now Aristori is committed. Now he has to do something with this army.
But he ain't going to get a whole lot. Actually able to depower a lot of production, but here come the storms. Again, Ravagers are actually pretty vulnerable to storms compared to Roaches. And you have a flank of Charge Lots coming in here. The entire army gets wiped out. Aristori, I mean, he has the economy to remax, or quote-unquote remax, rebuild that army. But the trade has definitely gone Rhize's favor.
Yeah, it was just a shame that he just doubled down after trying to push up this ramp. He lost so much, basically all of his lings and a decent chunk of his roaches, and he just kept pushing up the ramp as well. Like, it looked as if he felt pressured to do some damage to the Protoss player, and I don't blame him, especially because the Mutas didn't really do much at all. They forced out Phoenixes, to be fair, but that's kind of it, and they needed to do a little bit more than that.
And it couldn't quite get it, so we do see a massive tech switch right now from the side of Aristori. He finished up his Hydra Den, he's finished up his Infestation Pit. He's trying to do whatever he can with these Roaches and Ravagers. He knows he needs to get rid of them in favor of some Hydras or some Lurkers later down the line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so far he takes down a gateway. He's chipping away at this army. At the same time, though, Zealot Runby slips into the main base. The entire mineral line in the main is going to go down and forces the Mutas to come back home. Meanwhile, this main army of Aristori just hasn't done much at all. Again, just depowers some gateways.
Welcome to the meat grinder right now. I'm afraid to look at the units lost tab right now, right? But yeah, this is not the choke point you want to be fighting in right now when you have this many Storms and Archons on the ground.
Exactly. I just love that he's making use of these Phoenixes as well. He just shuts down so many of these Ravagers, just CCs them, lifts them on up, and the entire army of Aristori gets just shredded. At the same time, though, these two Roaches are putting in a lot of work, actually get a surprising amount of probe damage, but this is triggering Rhizer to counterattack.
Yeah, he knows that he doesn't have to worry about that. He's going all the way across the map with everything else he's got. Don't believe he has a Warp Prism. Yeah, it did get dealt with, but he's remaking it, and it's going to be on the other side of the map by the time he's fighting.
Yeah, we'll see if Aristori can hold on. What's important is that because his economy, for the most part, was left untouched, other than, of course, his main base, he was able to rebuild. He did have a relatively large bank. The Mutas are trying to go for a counterattack. They do get caught out. The main army is going to try and dive on top of these High Templar.
Decent biles, and I'm liking this concave of Roaches and Ravagers, but Rhizer, sorry, might have too much DPS. Here comes the full surround, though, and the entire high-tech army of Rhizer just got wiped off the map.
Wow,
the first big loss he sustained.
Exactly, every single Immortal, every single High Templar as well. Rhizer, he overextended just a little bit too much. And I don't know if you noticed, but Rhizer was actually looking to try and transition to Sky Toss. He had a Fleet Beacon on the way and a third Stargate as well, but he cannot make use of any of it. His ground army is non-existent. He only has High Templar, and they're so vulnerable.
Yeah, they don't even have energy stem, no! Or Storm, sorry. He wanted to morph them into Archons, but they got taken out right at the end there. And they're even being taken out in mid-morph.
Yeah, exactly. Rhizer, unfortunately, isn't going to be able to make use of his production that he was trying to work up towards. There it is. There's the Fleet Beacon and that third Stargate. He wanted to go into Sky Toss, but again, a little bit too soon. And I love it. He actually picks up his own Immortal. He does save it.
To keep it alive.
Yeah.
But saving it, of course, means that it's not dealing any damage. GG is called. Aristori with the comeback of perhaps the entire event. It's too early to call that, but yeah, that was one hell of a way of coming back into everything, you know? After having not one, but two fights not go your way at all. And by not go your way, I mean, you know, you lost your entire army and were forced to completely rebuild everything while not really doing much damage to your opponent. And then all of a sudden, you know, trapping the high-tech units in the middle of the map to come back from that.
Yeah.
Very well done here by Aristori.
You mentioned it as it was happening, and I do agree that Rhizer was just so ambitious, moving out without a Warp Prism, without a sure way to just be able to micro and keep those units alive, and more importantly, reinforce with the Gateway army, because we saw that it was mainly Immortals, High Templar, maybe some Archons, and that's it. Like, there wasn't a lot of buffer to keep all of that protected.
Exactly. They were pretty much a glass cannon at that point. They had a lot of damage potential. They didn't really have a lot of, like you said, a buffer or any kind of shields to keep them from sustaining damage, and they can't actually take that much damage before being taken out.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Rhizer had a little bit of momentum, but again, just a little bit too over-eager. He throws away that army in the middle of the map, and then bam, immediately at Aristori, he just dives on it. He just goes for that massive counterattack and takes game number 1. And now he is 1 game away from moving on to group stage number 2.
Yeah, clearing it out this early, I mean, that's pretty much a massive weight off your shoulders. You know, you have one less series to play to potentially make it to the next stage. You have a little bit more time to prepare and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's pretty important to get out first.
Exactly. You don't want to get knocked down to that knockout bracket.
As we continue our series now on Inside and Out. I almost said Ellie. We're in the bottom left-hand corner of the map, spawning all the way in the bottom left-hand corner. We, of course, have a blue Protoss player coming down from the land of America, but also going to be representing India as he has in Nation Wars, but also representing Team Super, he is Rhizer.
And spawning in the top right-hand corner of Inside Out ESL, we have the Polish Zerg player himself representing Berserker Esports. It is Aristori.
I don't know how he does it, Light, but he keeps making things happen. He defends against overwhelming odds over and over and over again, and is just about able to get enough momentum to overtake his opponent right at the end.
Yeah, I think something that we can point out so far in these 2 series that we've been able to cast of him is that his macro seems to be very solid, right? It's like, maybe not necessarily his control, maybe not necessarily his creep spread, but he just continues to just be able to reproduce that army, and sure, a fight may not go his way, but he's got more where that came from.
Yeah, it's very much textbook Zerg in a way. What do you mean we have to? You don't have to, you know, trade efficiently if you just keep mining so much and producing so much as well.
Yeah, and maybe, you know, maybe killing those gateways did actually have a bigger impact than we thought. So we weren't quite looking at the gateway count in general, but the fact that that was, what, 4 gateways going down does cut into however many gateway units can reinforce that army and sustain himself, Rhizer that is, when he did push out. So, yeah, I mean, that maybe all came into play.
Yeah, a huge number of things. But I will say that his initial openings were, well, I was going to say his initial openings were something that definitely put him ahead a lot, but now that I think about it, Rhizer really had the ball in his court after Aristori pushed into him, so maybe not so much.
Yeah, we'll see if Rhizer can adjust on the fly. You were talking about it in the previous series, but again, I'm sure these players have never played against each other before. They're not too familiar with each other's styles, and now they have a little bit of a better idea. But I mean, again, can you be able to calm down a little bit here mid-series? We'll see, as Rhizer once again forces the unnatural natural, just like the last game, and again, just like the last game, goes for the Stargate.
Are we feeling another Void Ray, though? Well, based on where it's rallied, then probably. But I would like to be ambitious enough to say, actually, he's going to go for Phoenixes.
I mean, that's not too out of the realm of possibility. You know, there have been some Protoss players, Hero included, playing around with early Phoenixes. You can get a lot done with them. You can be incredibly aggressive with them as well, being able to just CC and crowd control those queens early on. Meanwhile, so far, the Adepts haven't really been able to deal too much damage, just patrolling in between the bases, forcing the macro to be a little bit more awkward here. Now with 2 Adepts, he does commit into the main.
And he's going to be able to get a little bit of damage done here. Only a single queen and 4 lings to really defend things. 5, maybe 6. 6 drones for the cost of 2 adepts. Well worth it for a Protoss player.
Yeah, a great start here for Aristori. Of course, with the death of those adepts, that means it's going to be maybe a little bit more difficult to expand and take a 3rd base behind this, as he won't have them. Oh my god, meanwhile, the wall is not a wall!
I did not even realize that, and that's quite a number of links coming down. Thankfully for Rhizer, he does have this Void Ray, and he was producing an Adept. So yeah, thankfully his production will be kept alive, but you don't want to have Lings coming in for a full scout and potentially some probe damage either.
Yeah, I mean, the Lings did more than they really should have. To be fair, it was only 1 probe kill, but they got a full scout off of the main base as well. They confirmed that it was a Void Ray first and that there was an Oracle follow-up as well. I believe they forced a little bit of energy there and just a little bit of chaos, so yeah, I mean, Aristori doing a lot with a little there, and he really needed to after losing all those drones.
He absolutely did, yeah. And we'll see if he's going to lose even more drones here, as, okay, very quickly, he's able to transform the... Ooh! So quick on the trigger. He hasn't lost a single, or that Oracle, rather, has not gotten a single drone kill. That 1 kill was to a Zergling.
Yeah.
Or was a Zergling earlier on.
And now the Oracle is completely out of energy. It's not going to be able to do much of anything from here. The Void Ray does get a kill on one of the Overlords, does supply block Aristori, and now with the 2nd Oracle, maybe he can get something done. No, unfortunately, he cannot. Aristori, his defenses are just a little bit too good.
Yeah, maybe if Rhizer had the energy on that other Oracle, he might have taken a bit of a risk, but he knows that, you know, it's not really worth it right now. These Adepts, though, target firing is really good coming up from Rhizer.
Hey, this is insane right now. 6 drones went down earlier to 2 adepts, and now 8 more, potentially 9? 10?
9. It was 9 in the end there. So yeah, despite these oracles not being able to get the damage that they wanted to, the adepts absolutely carried them.
Yeah, exactly, and because of all that havoc that was being wreaked on the side of Aristori, now Rhizer, he can get his third base up and running. The Oracles and the Adepts weren't even needed to be here to make sure that there was no weird Ling run by or anything like that. The Lings are coming now, but at this point, it's a little bit too late. The third is now getting up and running. We have a shield battery, we have some units. The Oracles are even rushing back home.
Yeah, we're at the point right now where I really fear for the Zerg player, because I'm looking at Rhizer on even bases against Aristori and a high worker count as well.
Yeah, the
economic nightmare if you're a Zerg player in this EVP.
To say the least, the early game has not gone Aristori's way this game specifically. He's still trying to drone on up, and I mean, when tech-wise, he's still looking quite solid. You know, he's got +1 range on the way. He's got his Roach Horn. He's working on a 4th base, but his drone count, it needs to be higher than what it is. It should be higher than what it is. Because of that, Rhizer looking quite good, and mate, he's still got those 2 oracles.
Yeah, they have a lot of energy this time, enough energy that they're willing to try to fight against this queen. Not when it's Spore Crawler range, but, you know.
And I mean, that's fine. Oh my god, just barely. Both oracles survive. 4 drones go down. They were gas mining drones, by the way. And at the same time, okay, the Void Red was just looking around, hunting, making sure that if there was any kind of run by, he would have eyes on it. And Rhizer even expands behind this.
As he may as well. He scouted Aristori's 4th base and thought, you know what? I'm safe to take my own 4th. I'll meet you and I'll match you in bases right now.
Exactly. Meanwhile,
yeah, I was just gonna say, we're kind of getting to a very similar end goal here, at least when it comes to the Protoss player, but the Zerg player as well. Aristori's building a lot of roaches, no Spire this time. But it's interesting to see how Rhizer has adapted its build to get to the same endpoint.
Yeah, he just ramped up the aggression early on, and as we can see back at home, he has gone for the exact same kind of unit composition and kind of build order as we saw previously. You know, he goes into the faster Robo, goes into a much higher Immortal count as well, goes straight into Storm for High Templar. He's working off of very few Gateway units, but because of his aggression, Aristori hasn't had the opportunity to counterattack and make use of these roaches.
Not yet, anyway, because unless my eyes deceive me, we have 3 Dropper Lords getting ready right now.
Let's go! The Queens are on the way. This does get scouted here by Aristori, by Rhizer, but what's important is that Aristori has cut workers, he has cut drones, he is going across map with everything that he has, and does Rhizer have enough to defend? He does have Storm!
Yeah, maybe if he fights in his choke point, but Aristori knows he cannot afford to fight in that bridge unless he opens it up a little bit. So he's going to be sneaking around. This is not the best place to fight, but it's better than that choke point. Yeah,
exactly. He's breaking through all of these gateways again. Storm is not ideal against this mass amount of roaches. We need a better army here. Going into something like Disruptors, you were talking about it earlier, would be ideal. Immortals, they have their place, and we do have a couple of Storms being landed.
Yeah, Immortals can definitely do a lot to clean up these softened up roaches. Other roaches that were softened up by the Storm, but again, that depends a lot on whether or not Aristori sits in the Storm. How good are these force fields going to be to force that kind of choke point?
Yeah, that's kind of the big question here. Meanwhile, we have so many Storms. I'm shocked. Oh my god, we have some feedbacks as well on these Queens. You love to see it. We have so many High Templar available, 8 in total. And Aristori, he's really having a hard time breaking on through, but he is continuing to remax behind this. Like, again, the wave of roaches is not stopping.
Yeah, honestly, I think those feedbacks were a much better use of the High Templar energy. Now we have another wave of charges coming down. Just barely he was able to... Oh, actually, I spoke too soon. Archon did go down, but a lot of these high-tech units, the Immortals and the High Templar specifically, are still alive and they're still getting the damage done. This entire Zerg army has been thinned the heck out.
Yeah, and I mean, just in time as well. Rhizer, he has ran out of Storms. Like, he is running out of energy on these High Templar. And once again, I'm worried that he's overextending.
He absolutely overextended. He went right into the open ground, and that's exactly where Aristori wants to fight. That's exactly how Aristori gets a full surround, just like that. We saw Rhizer have about 1.5 times the army supply of Aristori all of a sudden he has less than half.
Exactly, just like the previous game as well. The tail is as old as time. He just goes, he gets a little bit of momentum and he gets a little bit too ahead of himself. He pushes on forward, gets completely surrounded. He lost every single High Templar, only has one remaining here, forced to morph in a couple of Archons, and now Aristori is actually breaking through.
Yeah, slowly but surely he is. These, again, these High Templar really can't do too much. They need time to gather their energy. Some Biles land fantastically on top of those Immortals. Thankfully, a battery overcharge did reset, so Rhizer can defend a little while longer.
Yeah, he is going to be able to hold on. He's going to be able to clean up these harassing roaches. Meanwhile, Aristori is just maxing out once again. Like, he hasn't made a single drone for the past 2-3 minutes. Just nothing but roaches. Queens are coming into play as well. Biles are connecting. Does take out one of the High Templar. And again, is there enough? There is enough energy for Storm.
Ooh. And that should be just enough to keep this back. Aristori, I'm worried, may have tunnel vision a little bit, but I mean, I'm looking at the economies and the production right now, and Aristori still, you know, he can afford to trade a little bit inefficiently. Not too inefficiently, but, you know.
Yeah, that's the thing. As time goes on, like, is Aristori running out of steam? That is the question. Is he? Because roaches find their way, into the natural base. The Artosis pylon goes down, denies +3, denies all of this immortal production. There is a second robo going on, so he is going to get a couple more immortals out, but now Rhizer's being pulled apart.
Yeah, the job for all those roaches is just depower whatever it can. The Zealot run-by is going to do a lot to force Aristori to push into Rhizer, but is Rhizer really prepared for Aristori to push into him right now?
That is the question. Rhizer, he doesn't flinch. He keeps the majority of his army here at the third base, but he is losing worker after worker. It looks like these Zealot Warpins are going to be enough to finally clean up all these roaches, and the Zealot run-by did kill the fourth base of Aristori.
Yeah, honestly, there are no defenses back home for Aristori. We're kind of in a pseudo-base trade scenario. I say that as Rhizer turns his Zealots around.
Yeah, the Zealots turn around. It looks like Rhizer is going to be congregating everything that he has here at the third base location. And we were talking about before, like, is Aristori running out of steam here? We'll see, as once again, Rhizer pushes out, but this time I think he does have enough.
Yeah, the Biles just missed those High Templar. And now, you know, Aristori doesn't have much of a bank on him. Rhizer has caught up when it comes to the army supply. He's overtaken the army supply as well. And Archons and Immortals, they're just a lot tougher than Roaches and Ravagers are.
Yeah, and this time we have Zealots to protect them. This time we have a buffer. This time we have a War Prism as well. Rhizer is pushing out across the map. He may have lost almost every single probe here at his third base location, but it's okay. He still has a decent economy behind this. He's forcing himself through. Biles are kind of finding some connections, but again, look at all that energy. Look at all those storms.
Yeah, he can pretty much cover the entire map in storms right now, and still have a High Templar left over to feed back the Queens.
Exactly. Here we go. The counterattack is real. The storms are connecting. He's getting on top of this third base. The third base that is running out of resources, by the way, because of how all-in Aristori was. And it looks like the third is being broken, and Rhizer is fighting back in this series.
Aristori, you know, he fanned out his forces as well as he could have. That was as good of a position as he could have gotten in the end there, but the fact of the matter is he just didn't have the supply. And with that, Rhizer fights back, and we are getting an ace match.
Really, the only way it should be. We're going all the way to game number 3 between these two players, and despite Rhizer making a little bit of a misstep, and again, just stepping a little bit too far outside of his safe zone, he was still able to recover anyway, still able to defend. And again, I'm sure a lot of it did also have to do with that Zealot run by, just, again, diverting the attention away for Aristori.
I was fully ready to wrap this series up here after I saw Rhizer kind of give up that choke point and get fully surrounded again. You know, Rhizer, calm the heck down, man. It's, you don't have to give up positions like that. But in the end, he was able to make it work, and we're having this series kind of play out how I initially expected it to play out. You know, after game number 1 and half of game number 2, I wasn't so sure, but yeah, this is about what I think most of us who have been following these players expect.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh god, it's just great to see that we were at least able to get an ace match. An ace match between these two. Who is going to make it through in the end? It's still a little bit hard to call. We'll see as, ooh, for the first time tonight, we end up on Cosmic Sapphire.
Yeah, I gotta be honest, Slide, I was kind of worried we would see nothing but
Yeah.
Tropical Sacrifice and Inside and Out
Mhm.
over and over again.
Yeah, I was worried as well. But thankfully, we're getting a little bit more variety here, at least a little bit more. Of course, Cosmic Sapphire being the, I believe, largest map in the map pool. I believe this is poised to be the next Glittering
that
Ashes
tracks.
or Eternal Empire.
Yeah, I think that tracks. Trying to think, Data C is pretty small. There's that star map, that other map that was kind of like Golden Wall, but not really.
Mhm.
That's kind of small. But
Stargazer.
regardless, we can speculate on that. Stargazer, that's what it was called. But anyway, we can speculate on that at another point, because now we have to decide who is going to be making it to group stage number 2. Could it be our player in the bottom right-hand corner map, swatting all the way in the bottom right-hand corner of Cosmic Sapphire, a Red Zerg player from the land of Poland, representing Berserker Esports? He is Aristori.
And spawning in the top left-hand corner of Cosmic Sapphire ESL, we have the American Protoss player himself representing Team Super. It is Rhizer.
Once again, sticking to the old Rhizer classic, if you want to call it that. I'm not sure if I do want to call it that, seeing as how I've only casted 2 games of him doing this so far. But yeah, building a wall back at home and doing whatever he can to block the natural base of his Zerg opponent.
Yeah, and we'll see if the map comes into play here. I don't think so, because Aristori isn't the most aggressive player, as he does get his, natural base blocked. But one of the big features of this map is this ramp here. Sorry, is this choke point coming into the natural base. It is very narrow. It doesn't take very many buildings at all to wall off. You can be a little bit greedy because of it, and it can be a little bit more difficult to break here if you're going for something like a Bane Bust or an early Roach push, or again, early aggression against a Protoss player.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to pull it off regardless, I guess, seeing as how, you mentioned it, this is straight up the largest, not only the largest map in the current pool, but also the map with the largest rush distance. It does snake around a little bit in the middle of the map.
Yeah, we do have a lot of rocks that do open things up, but before the rocks get opened up, again, it does snake around. Another interesting feature of this map is, of course, the gold base. There is a gold towards the bottom left-hand side of the map, not towards the top right. So again, a little bit different in that respect, but it's definitely cool to see a map like this. And yeah, we'll see if this becomes more of a favorite because of how large it is, or not so much, because there are some quirks here as well.
Yeah, I have a feeling this is going to be a very polarizing map, much like Dreamcatcher a couple of years ago. Pretty much exactly like Dreamcatcher, gold base on one side of the map, not the other.
Yeah, we'll see. As we've already seen it come into play, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago in ESL Asia, Top even, or Kiwian even took that gold base which against Hero, which was great to see. But again, I doubt we're going to see it come into play here in this series, unfortunately, as the first Adept is coming across the map. And again, just like every other game so far this series, Rhizer isn't really diverging. He isn't going for a Twilight Council opener or even a Robo opener.
Yeah, why break what isn't fixed? Or what isn't broken? Why? The other way around. Why fix what isn't broken? There we go.
Hey,
it's worked out for him.
Yaku, I need you to stay with me, okay? Like the night is still young, papi. We still got an entire night ahead of us. I can't lose you now, Yaku. I can't lose you now.
But speaking of losing, that's what Aristori is going to do with a lot of these drones.
Yeah, exactly. As a little bit of missed target fire there. Only 4 drones go down. It could have been 5, but the Adept barely couldn't get that last shot off there. Not as bad as last game, but for 2 Adepts to get 4 drones and a full scout off, not bad.
Yeah, trading just about evenly, I think. Yeah, it's 2 drones for the cost of 1 Adept.
Oh, and this is a big difference. Now that the Adepts have been dealt with relatively quickly, now the Lings go for a massive counterattack, and now they make life a little bit harder for Rhizer to expand and get this third up and running.
Yeah, it's working overtime right now. Its attacks are definitely a little slow, to say the least.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that we have 10 more Lings behind this as well. Again, Aristori, he wants to try and delay this as much as possible. He gets one probe, he gets a second probe as well. Aye. Not the biggest of deals, but again, this stuff slowly does add up.
Yeah, just like that, I feel like Aristori has just about been able to equalize the worker damage dealt to him. And of course, another thing you can't really underestimate here, he has full map control. Can he get the cancel? Can he get the cancel? He should be able to. The Oracle comes in, and it gets cancelled right at the last second. Another probe goes down.
Wow, another probe goes down. Of course, the Oracle is forced to use its energy as well to help defend, and the Lings are still here looking to try and dive on that probe. It looks like the Void Ray is going to be enough, though, and it finally does stay alive. At the same time, 2 Adepts do get across the map, and ooh, just like last game, 6 probes go down.
Yeah, a lot of damage being dealt. Just about able to equalize the work count.
Oh my god.
Right now. Lucky number 7.
7 drones in the end. Not bad damage here from Rhizer again to be able to equalize, but again, equalize. We saw that last game, Rhizer was dominant in the early game. Rhizer was just so far ahead, getting so many drone kills, being able to take advantage of that and expand and get his 3rd up and running unhindered, get his 4th up and running as well. This game, he's having a harder time. Aristori is fighting back, and because of that, like, he's not going to be forced into any kind of weird, or he shouldn't be forced into any kind of weird all-in like he was previously.
That's what we think.
Up.
The wall is not a wall, and the Lings are able to slip in and get a full-on scout of all of the tech. Aristori is able to confirm, yep, you're just about doing the exact same thing you've done in the last 2 games. So I'm gonna do that too, and go for a Roach Horn.
Exactly, but this time, a lot of lost mine time here in the main base. 3 probes go down as well. The Lings still have not been dealt with. The Immortals having a hard time keeping up as well. We don't have a lot of gateways. The gateways are still on the way, so there just aren't a lot of units here to clean this up.
Yeah, once again, Rhizer unable to really assert himself in the locations that he wants to right now, because he has to go back and defend all the time.
Finally, Rhizer cleans up those Lings, and now he can start focusing on his Oracles across the map. But Aristori, he's getting fully saturated on 3 bases. His drone count is looking very healthy. I say that as he loses a couple of drones. Bit of a feels bad, man, but he can afford to lose some.
I mean, good guy Rhizer, you know? He noticed that extractor was oversaturated, so he helped him make it a bit more efficient.
There you go. He's just
He's
helping his opponent out a little bit. Oh god, but now Aristori, he's hit his stride. 80 drones out now for Aristori. The creep spread is decent, you know, connecting all of these bases as well. Now he can get into not just Roaches, but Ling, Bane, Roach, Ravager is the name of the game here for Aristori. Like, he is really hitting his stride, and Rhizer is still struggling to get going.
Yeah, we're getting into the mid game right now. And Aristori honestly has the drone count of a late game Zerg player. He does not have to worry about mining for a long time.
Exactly, and I feel like because of all that lost mining time, because of all the Ling harassment, because of the late 3rd base, I feel like Storm is much later than it once was. Templar Archives as well. The overall army here of Rhizer is still lacking any kind of push potential. So again, Aristori is free to just tech on up, work on his own army, and just take full control of his side of the map.
Like so. Meanwhile, he is starting to push out, and again, to sort of assert himself on the map. If he can actually get a surround on the Protoss army, it would be difficult, but if he could get a surround on the Protoss army, then I don't really see a buffer of gateway units like we did in previous games.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see if he can pull something like that off. So far, Aristori has split up his army. He's going to try and push in towards a 3rd and 4th base at the same time. But Rhizer, likewise, was also able to split up. Ooh, Pylon gets targeted down, and Aristori, he's finding a little bit of damage here. I
just realized, I think this is the first time we're seeing Stalkers being made. I'm not sure why he recalled those Stalkers to that base. That it was just that.
Yeah, exactly, but did too much of his army go over towards the 3rd base, because now the 4th is completely exposed, and we are going to have to see a cancel.
Yeah, we're getting full surrounds just about everywhere. Rhizer getting attacked from the north and the south. He just never has an army in position when it's time, when Aristori decides to fight. That base will go down. could not be cancelled because it finished up, and it's kind of difficult to see Aristori giving up this position from here.
Exactly. Rhizer's even supply blocked right now. Finally, he does break free of that supply block, but as you were saying, that was a kill, not a cancel on the 4th base. He's still stuck at home. He can be a little bit aggressive with the Skytoss units, I guess, but Aristori is about to max out.
Yeah, might as well be maxed out for all intents and purposes, but he's still, I like this, he's not tunnel visioning at all. He's still working on his next stage. The infestation pit is coming down. Eventually he's going to have a hive, vipers if he needs them.
Yeah, he is taking up behind this. 2-2 about to kick in as well in a couple of seconds, and Aristori has the supply to pull apart his opponent. Rhizer has to pick and choose. Does he defend his 3rd or his 4th?
Well, honestly right now, it's he's going to take damage somewhere.
Exactly. He's being pulled apart right now. We do have some decent storms here towards the south, and it looks like Rhizer is holding on both fronts, but he did take some losses. And again, Aristori, he's just going to remax and do that all over again.
Yeah, unlike game number 2, like you mentioned, there's no Zealot run by or anything. Rhizer really can't afford to spare his supply at the moment, so there's nothing that's really slowing down the economy of Aristori. He can trade as inefficiently as he wants because he was on an end game economy before the mid game even happened. It's so rich.
Pretty much, mate, pretty much. I am a little bit concerned, though, because despite having the infestation pit, it hasn't been used for anything yet. You know, we could be going into Hive right now. We could be going into Vipers right now, if need be, or even a higher tier of tech. So I feel like Aristori is allowing that to fall by the wayside a little bit, but maybe he can afford to do so.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll definitely see as the Banelings are looking to crash on in, but they connect mostly with Archons, who are within the Guardian Shield, so not the most efficient use of your Banelings. That's a very efficient use of Banelings, though.
Oh my god, exactly. Again, all Aristori has to do was distract his opponent, keep his attention here on the 4th base, and now the Baneling run by goes on in. 16 workers have gone down. Rhizer, not just struggling now with the army, but also with the economy. He still has a lot of storms available to him, and he's going to be able to buy some time. But Aristori behind this, there we go. This is what we were waiting for. Hive and Lurker Den on the way.
Okay, it's an interesting way he decided to play this out, but I guess it does make sense. He's kind of noticed that Rhizer is very Zealot heavy when it comes to his gateway unit of choice.
Yeah, like he's very ground heavy. He doesn't have Disruptors, he doesn't have Colossi. I do think that Lurkers would be amazing right now, especially against Storm. Like, Lurkers are surprisingly beefy against Storms. They can kind of sit them a little bit, but you know, it's still on the way. He doesn't have the Hydra Lurker yet. He's still relying on Lingbane Roach Ravager, and he's getting ready for a mass surround.
Once again, Rhizer, he does have the high ground, but it's also a very open high ground. Ooh. Look at all those storms, though, absolutely decimating the army. Yeah, the Roaches were able to stand strong, but there's only so much storm you can defend against as a Roach.
Oh my god, in the end, Rhizer does barely break on through, but it cost him every single High Templar. Now he has no more storms available. He is going to be able to get this base, but at the same time, massive Ling run by hits the 4th base, and Aristori, he's just buying time. He is just remaxing.
I was going to say, we'll see if Rhizer even needs those storms, because he has full-on momentum right now. If he can catch these units as they pop out, then it's difficult to see him losing this game. Even now, he's fighting the remains of Aristori's army and still winning. But his army isn't really, you know, a tight unit at the moment. Yeah, he was able to get a lot of drone kills though in that move out. Like, he's pushing on forward once again. Aristori has to be careful. He cannot engage right now. He just has to buy time. We have more roaches on the way as well, but his own economy was crippled. Like, this is still pretty close. Yeah, Aristori barely has much mining left. Barely has much of a bank left either. Yeah, like the fresh bases for both players are not being mined out. Are not being mined from right now. Like, their economies are just in the gutter. We do see that the army of Rhizer is pushing on forward, and against just plain Roach Ravager, I think he can maybe do this. He only has 2 Immortals though. I think he can, actually. If he forces the fight and he keeps enough of his Immortals alive, then maybe there's a chance the Roaches are starting to slip on in, trying to target fire the Immortals, but the Immortals just won't die, Light! Oh my... It's in their name! The Immortals don't die, the Roach Ravager does crumble. The boys were pulled, and it was not enough. Rhizer is breaking on through, and even though we had a Lurker Den, even though we had a Hydra Den, it never came into play. Aristori just couldn't take up in time. The Hive was a little bit too late. He was stuck on Roach Ravager, and Rhizer has broken through. Yeah, he can still afford to warp in a little bit here and there. Rhizer broke through. He broke out of this group and will be the first player from Group C, of course, advancing over to group stage number 2, or the second group stage.